Howdy folks, welcome back to Black Sheep Meadow. I'm Brent, and today we are going to talk a thing or two about tomatoes and some of the problems that they have and how I deal with them. To get y'all up to date, if y'all are new to the channel, me and Amber for the year 2023 are attempting to grow 80% of all of our own food. And while we're after quantity, I'm also after quality as well. So we're going to get right into some of the things here. If y'all look back here, this is probably, we have 2 or 3 sections, I think 3 sections of tomatoes this year I've put in different places. 2 are going to be our main crop, one's an experimental section. As you can see here through the trellis, we have tubs with the tomatoes planted through the center, and we have beans and squash on the outsides of either end of the trellis. The beans, so first off, some of our issues that we've had in the past, we've started with companion planting. So you can see the beans that are growing up the trellis. There's some of these, the bean stalks that are actually probably over 6 foot now. They're almost, you can't quite see them back there, but the vines are actually all the way up almost at the middle of the trellis. That's going to do a couple of things for us here this summer. The beans, I'm going to get a crop off of them, but you know, we're in Texas, growing zone 8B, Central Texas. By the middle of June, we're going to start seeing temperatures really getting close to the 100-degree mark. And while plants need sunlight, the leaves of the beans are actually going to protect the tomatoes from the direct sunlight throughout the middle of the day. So I don't want my tomatoes cooked like we had in years past. So I'm going to get y'all in here on these tubs a little bit closer, because there's a few things in detail that these are all new tubs for this year. And if y'all haven't watched how we build our tubs, go back and check out those videos. There's several of them out there. But we actually start off with like a wood chip or sticks and twigs at the very bottom of the tub. We put grass, topsoil, and our compost on top, which left me with some issues this year because the tomato cages that I'm putting in the tubs, I can't get the sticks or the stems of the tomato cage all the way down to the bottom of the tub because they're hitting the wood chunks at the bottom. So I'm not getting the full depth of the tomato cage, which is fine because over the next 3 to 4 months, I'm going to say 3 to 4 months, 2 to 3 months, the wood is going to disintegrate just enough to where I can get the cage all the way down to the bottom. So I'm going to get y'all a little bit closer here. Hold on 1 second. All right, so I got y'all in here on one of our Roma plants. This entire lineup of tomatoes here are all either a Roma or a Roma-like. I think some of the ones further towards the end are like a San Marzano. But I've already got a cage installed, and I mentioned how the cage does not, at this point in time, is not wanting to sit all the way down, which is fine. I'm probably actually going to tie the cage up to the top of the trellis for support. So I see a lot of issues with blight on our plants, and some of the blight, blight is actually a fungal disease where the leaves are actually going to start to yellow, maybe even eventually kill the plant at some point in time. The blight is actually caused by excessive moisture. First off, on all of our tomato plants, they're all irrigated with a drip system. I've got the drip system on a timer, and even I can control how long or how much water, how many days. You know, we can't control the rain, but I can control how much water I put on the plants. When I put that water on the plants, I don't want the water being broadcast onto the leaves. The moisture either on the top or the bottom side of the leaves is going to promote fungal diseases like blight. So at the end of the day, tomatoes just don't like their leaves getting wet, which is fine. The next thing is we want to get these leaves off the soil. There's all kinds of bacteria and fungal growth in the soil, which is fine. That actually makes for a good soil. That being said, the plant itself outside of the roots doesn't like it. So we're going to come in and actually trim any of these leaves or stems that are not going to produce any tomatoes. First off, we want to get these limbs to the point where if it's not going to produce anything, I don't need the plant supporting it. So there is actually a point in time where a photosynthesis is going to be a factor. That being said, the bottom leaves, they're all going. I like to leave the top of the plant very bushy. It does give, once the plant begins to start producing fruit, the extra leaves on top kind of tends to help keep the birds away from it to where maybe they can't see it. So I'm going to get this plant trimmed up. I'm going to put y'all on a time lapse. This is probably going to take me about 5 or 6 minutes, and I'm going to step back with y'all as soon as I get it trimmed out. All right, as you can see here, we got our plant all trimmed up. None of the leaves are touching any of the soil anymore. So we have our should hopefully have our blight taken care of with this. If you can see, this entire plant is going to have to grow up through this cage. Once again, this plant's only about 3.5 weeks old right now. I'm going to show you all here in just a minute some plants that are these exact same Roma plants that are probably going on 5.5 weeks old. I tried cheating our last frost, which I was actually successful with. So you can see how this plant here is trimmed up, no leaves touching, versus this plant here. And I can show y'all if I can get in here. Let me adjust the camera. You see some of the leaves that are actually touching the soil, how they're starting to yellow. That's an indication that a blight or some type of fungus is starting to take place. Now I'm not a fan of spraying things on my food. So if we do have an issue with blight later on, we can come back with like a copper fungicide and chemically take care of it. There's copper fungicides that are considered organic. But once again, if I don't have to spray something on my food, I prefer to not have to. I've been very successful with this in the years past doing so. So over the next 3 to 4 weeks or so, as this plant continues to take up through this tomato cage, every week I'm going to come in, I'm going to try and force this cage back down to where if the wood in the bottom begins to rot, I can actually shove the pegs through and actually get if you can see the wire here, if I can get the leaves, I'm just going to keep funneling them up every single week for support for the plant. All right, so the second biggest thing that we deal with is blossom end rot. And blossom end rot can be caused by a calcium deficiency. More often than not, it's actually caused by inconsistent waterings. And the inconsistent waterings is basically not allowing the calcium to move through the plant like it should. So all these plants, when they start to produce fruit, man, they are really going to start to produce fruit. So a lot of times the calcium that the roots are picking up is insufficient to get to the fruit as it's being produced. So once again, before y'all just go start adding something like a eggshell or a calcium supplement to your soil, do a soil test. I've talked several times about Soil Savvy and how we test our soil every single year here. These are all containers that I have tested. I've made every single one of these. They all come from the same compost and soil. So I've already tested all this. I know my calcium content in the soil it's sufficient whenever I planted them. That being said, as soon as this plant starts producing, it's going to start consuming a lot of that. Now, right now you're going to say, hey, Brent, you're not even producing fruit yet. How do you know if you're going to have a blossom end rot issue? Well, first off, I know year after year where my calcium parts per million wise are at on the soil, and I know that by the time I get 4 to 6 weeks into producing fruit, that my calcium levels are actually be lower than what's needed, and I'll start having blossom end rot issues. That being said, once I start having blossom end rot issues, it's really kind of too late. You're 3 to 4 weeks behind getting the nutrients in the soil for the roots to pick up to get that to the fruit. So here we are. We've already got plants that are blooming, and we're going to have tomatoes off of these probably in another 3 weeks. So right now, I've already taken every year. We save up all of our leftover eggshells. I pulverize them into a super fine powder. I don't know if y'all can see the dust off of that. And I'm going to take my eggshell, my calcium supplement, and I'm going to start to sprinkle that eggshell along the outer edges of the container. I'm going to say within a 24-inch circumference around the plant, right at the edge. Basically what we're looking for is those little, there's a secondary root system. I think they call them tertiary roots. But we're looking for the little feeder roots all out on the edges to pick up that calcium to start producing the fruit. So we've got this plant taken care of. I've got 21 more to go down this line. Like I said, once again, this is 2 of our biggest issues with the tomato plants this year. Like I said, we're not only looking for quantity, we're looking for quality. So I'm going to get the rest of these done, and then I'm going to get you to some tomato plants that are already about 2.5 to 3 weeks ahead of schedule on this one. Follow along. All right, so as you can see here, this is another Roma plant. This was an impulse buy. We did not seed start this particular Roma. This was, let me think about this, probably going back into middle of March, early part of March. We were at a local box store, and The dog come over here to drink water. We were at a local box store and I had an impulse buy of a Roma tomato plant. I said, you know what, I'm gonna try and cheat our last frost. And while we did get a little bit of frost damage on it, it was real early on. You can't even tell it now, the plant's recovered from it. But you can already see we have fruit coming off the plant already. We've got actually quite a few tomatoes off of this that are probably gonna be ready for harvest in the next week and a half or so. So for the middle of April, end of April, that's a really good deal there. We've got some of my favorite. These are a indeterminate tomato. This is a Chelsea Sweet. And this tomato plant's gonna get huge. I'm gonna build a structure off the top of the shed. This thing's gonna continue growing like wildfire. But last year, this tomato plant produced tomatoes so good, and well, I ate them so fast, I don't even think they made it into the house. I never even got to weigh them, or Amber never got to cook with them. I'd eat them just as fast as the plant could produce. But you can see we're in, let's see, these plants are roughly 5.5, 6 weeks old, and we're at the end of April, and I've got tomato plants that are almost 6 foot tall. So pretty impressive deal there. We're gonna take all of our trimmings off of our plants, off our tomato plants, and we are gonna give them to the chickens, as long as I don't get attacked. Let them tear it up. Damn. Alrighty folks, hopefully today I was able to give y'all some information about problems that we've had with our tomato plants, and hopefully you've learned something from it. I would like to encourage you, to get out and do it on your own. No matter how much YouTube video tells you, there's no experience or learning matter that you're never going to learn faster than actually doing it yourself. So guys, if in the meantime, if y'all like what our channel is all about, if y'all like what we're doing, follow us, leave a like on the video. You can actually ring the little bell for notifications, so whenever we post future videos, you'll get a notification for it. We encourage y'all to get off the system and become self-sufficient, do things for yourself. In the meantime, we'll see y'all next week.